Hey there, welcome back to Tweet Trends. Today's episode is all about the fathers, the significance of fathers in our lives and society, and how we view fathers, all things fathers and fatherhood. And because of that, I could not think of a better guest for today's episode than this handsome gentleman next to me here. His name is Winston Langham. He is my husband. He is Father of the Year in my eyes. Um, I don't know any other way to describe him. Look at him blushing there. I see you, baby.
Wow.
Welcome, Winston.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Yvette. And I appreciate you for having me come on to your show today. Hi, Tweet Trans family.
Well, I appreciate you for joining me. I thought about it the other day and I said, as many episodes as I've had you on, you've maybe only been visually on two of them. And so, what better time to bring you on live in full color um, to talk about fatherhood, being a father. I like to look at you as the ultimate father
Oh,
because
wow.
your journey in fatherhood, you've been a father um, more than half of your life now.
Yes.
And you've had the experience of fatherhood from being a young person as a father, and a middle age person, and a little bit older. So I think you're the perfect person to talk to about fatherhood.
Thank you. Thank you. I got to think about that part about the middle age. I'm like, I needed to define middle age a little bit different, but we'll roll with it for the purposes of what we're talking about here.
Okay, thank you for working with me. Thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. I'm not trying to say that you're old, not at all.
Huh? What'd you say? All right. Sorry.
Okay, so the cool part about today's episode is that today is actually my father's birthday. And
Indeed.
although he's no longer with us, he passed back in 2018. I don't know that I would have been able to get him to come on my show as a guest. I don't know. What do you think? You think my dad would have come on the show?
I think he would have. I think you would have done most of the talking and he would have smiled and nodded, but that would have been the extent of that show.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I just had to kind of put that plug in there, happy Heavenly Father's Day, Dad. His birthday a lot
And
of times
birthday. Yeah.
it would a lot of times fall on Father's Day. So this can be a kind of interesting time period for me. But the idea and opportunity to celebrate fathers, I definitely could not let this go by. So having said all of that, tell us a little bit about your journey as a father.
My journey as a father started, fortunately slash unfortunately, as a high school senior. As a high school senior, nearing the end of my senior year, my girlfriend at the time and I were starting to realize that she was going through some changes. And so over the course of that summer, um, found out that, she got a pregnancy test and found out that she was pregnant. And because there wasn't a lot of activity, we had to think back to when that could have occurred. And so just kind of ballpark figuring that it happened around the December time frame, that meant that around September, he or she would be due. And so as it stands, I was due to go off to college and start my freshman year at Auburn University. And as it would have it, my son was born in Durham, North Carolina. My girlfriend went to stay with her aunt during that time period. And so I was born in Durham, North Carolina, a week before I started college. So college started September 21st, 1988. He was born September 14th, 1988. So my first day of classes, I have a 1 week old son that I had not met yet.
Wow. And so, what was fatherhood like as a teen?
So it was difficult because for my own personal situation, I didn't feel like I had a good understanding of what I needed to do. I just knew I needed to do something. I knew that that was my responsibility. He didn't ask to be here. I had to do the things necessary to not, you know, not have him have a challenging, upbringing and whatnot. So I'm off trying to study civil engineering. I'm trying to, run track, which is totally different running high school track versus D1, track at Auburn. A lot of great people that were there at that time and just amazing athletes. So just trying to keep up with them. And then at the same time, trying to find a way with the limitations on employment to make some money on the side to be able to send home to support my son. So it was quite the challenge, and for I guess a story for a different day. That's what led me to finally deciding to join the Navy to get benefits and income to support him.
Okay, all right. So then fast forward, you have your son as a teenager. Now up to this point in time, you've added three more children on to that the roster of children. And how has fatherhood evolved over time for you?
So fatherhood has evolved in a very special way for me. Um, One thing I liked about my childhood is that my mom, my uncles, my aunts, in my upbringing, when people came home, my mom had 8 siblings. So when people came home from college or living elsewhere, they were good about going to visit the seniors or the elders in the neighborhood. And so I often got to tag along with them in that space. And so those same people, when I was off to college and, coming home from the Navy and college, whatnot, then I was consistent about going to visit them. And now I had Tristan to take with me. And so one of the most important lessons I had is from my grandmother's good friend, the late Annie Williams. I had Tristan and I had him at her place and I was playing with him and I had him on the table and she says, baby, don't put him on my table. And I'm like, oh no, he's fine. I got him. I'm not gonna let him fall off. And she's like, oh no, I don't want him on my table. And so it's like, oh, and she wasn't nasty about it or anything, but it was sort of that understanding of, hey, your kid is gonna walk around, toddle around, do other stuff, but that's my dinner table. That's my place where I have my meals, and I don't want him on that table. And I appreciated that because I didn't see it that way, right? I'm thinking it was a safety thing, like I'm gonna let him fall, and it was a presence of this is how you come into someone else's space and respect their place and their property. In addition to that, the bringing him around her as he got older and as Tiffany got older, that was the norm. So they understood and knew that, hey, when we go to these different places, we're going to go and visit these people, and you're going to say your name and speak and tell them what you're doing now and give them some synopsis because they care about you. That's that family, that community piece. And so because that was done to me, that was the easiest and the best gift that I could have passed on to them, which fortunately you got to be a part of that as well between going to visit Miss Annie and also Aunt Neat before they both unfortunately passed.
Right. This is very true. Well, and that's one of the things when I was growing up that we did as well. My dad would take us to the relatives on his side, and we would go, and the adults would sit and talk, but you were expected to speak, be polite. You were also expected not to take anything. And I don't know
Wow.
about that part of the whole upbringing. I don't know. I think that was a old school type mentality of rearing children. It's like children were seen and not heard unless
Right.
somebody spoke to you, and then you better speak up because if you don't, it's going to be a time in the land. Um,
Right.
so now, as far as what old school versus new school, like modern fatherhood versus in the past. What are your thoughts on that? I don't like, do you have any thoughts on it? Like, is that a
Oh, it's definitely a thing. I have plenty of thoughts. I think the gamut, that time period, just seeing how society has changed, has really been key for me. And what's been more important is for me to have the ability to change. One of the things that I see as sort of a criticism of myself when in my younger years, it was there's this false bravado, false machismo type scenario of, well, my son, he's gonna do this, and he's gonna play with trucks and balls, and he's gonna do all these things that boys are supposed to do by this, but what we see in society. And so I also knew that from my own personal upbringing, the limited engagement that I had from adults in my athletic career, I still was able to be, fairly decent in football and track, and basketball, not so much. That didn't come until my adulthood that I became decent in that as well. So for me, as this young father now in my early 20s, with my son, it was like, oh, he's going to have the cheat codes. Like, he's going to be nice in football. He's going to be nice in track. He's going to be nice in basketball. He's going to be nice in volleyball and tennis. Like, yo, I got him because I now know how to do all this stuff. And boy, when I bring him up and we're going to do all this stuff, and he's going to be a 5 sport, 6 sport, whatever, just all of this stuff in my head that now that he has something that I didn't have, he's going to do this stuff. And that just wasn't for him. Right. And so that was a challenge for me because it's like, what's wrong with him? Like, why don't he want to go and do this stuff? Why don't he want to, play? Now, that doesn't mean that he didn't like playing, with his friends and playing ball and dodgeball and catch and stuff. He did. He just wasn't as determined about it as I was at that stage. He wasn't as competitive as I was. And so that was sort of a internal, like, what's wrong with me that I can't get him to want to do those things, right? And that was an unfair assessment of that scenario. So to then have to grow and say, okay, maybe that's just not for him, right? All right, I have to receive that and I have to accept that. I love him unconditionally. So if that's not your thing, okay, then what is your thing? All right, got it. So your thing is to do these other things, and you have more of a creative spirit and more of an artistic spirit. Okay, I don't understand that. So I'm going to let you do what you do because that's what you do. And I just have to receive that you're more of a creative than what I am and what I understand. He was more musically inclined than I was or knew to be. So, okay, we're going to go to band competitions and do those things that you enjoy and you want to do. And I think that was key that I had to learn that in the moment on the fly. Whereas now, yeah, I really accept that, right? So as we kind of see around and how we interact with Bree and even with the grands, it's, hey, what's your thing? All right, we still want to expose you to other stuff because having that exposure is going to be key. You may not realize that you enjoy doing something until you try it, but
right?
at the same time, we're not necessarily trying to make you a pro athlete at this age, because of all the feel good stories that we see from others. So now it's easier for me to in our own situation accept the kid for who they seem to be and what they seem to like right now. It still may change, and that's okay. But also when I see other people in scenarios, I can be more of an advocate for the kid in that mindset of, well, this is the way I had to do it, so that's the way they have to do it. It's like, but do they? Like, what's wrong with that? It's like it's okay for them to like something different. It's okay for them to want to do something different. Engage them, encourage them in what it is that they like and what they enjoy. Expose them to the things that you like and enjoy, and see if they have an affinity towards it. If they do, that's fine. If they don't, then that's okay as well, and be accepting and receptive of that, receptive of that.
So now, how do you think we get that message across to younger dads or dads in general, that there's no manual that tells you, okay, here's the pivot when you realize that your kids are trying to meet you where you are versus you're trying to meet them where they are? How do we kind of explain that or get people to understand that you might have to get down on the child's level and play what the child wants to do, versus them trying to now be an adult like you at such a young age to fit in with you?
Well, I think it starts with self-confidence, right? Like when I look in the mirror, I have to know who I am. I have to know, I have a proclivity for this or that. I have to know what my likes and dislikes are. And I have to be okay with that, regardless of what anyone else around me may say. That being said, once I have confidence in who I am as a person, as a man, as a father, then I can now receive what that kid may wants to do. So in the event of, older daughter and younger daughter, if they want to play T sets or whatever, I have to be okay with doing that, because it's like, oh, I'm not going to play T sets because I'm a man and men don't do that. No, my daughter wants me to play and this is what she wants to play. Then I'm going to play with her because I'm meeting her where she wants to be. Right. And so, in my opinion, that creates that bond that says, as a dad, you have to be able to give that child what they need. That's what mothers have been doing for centuries, right? And it's been acceptable. And so, I look at the scenario of my, late, grandmother, maternal grandmother, and she had 9 kids. 9 kids are not going to be the same, right? They're just they're not. Your mom has 3 kids, and y'all ain't the same. So,
Amen.
so so to think that, just because you have same parents of whatever number of siblings, 3 to 9 and whatever in between, that does not define that everybody's going to have the same likes and dislikes, right? So how do you give the kid who's outgoing what they need? Well, you match them in that energy and space of being outgoing. The person that's not, that's more reserved, match them in that space, make it secure for them to be who they are, and let them receive that. So that's the thing for me, is to be secure in who you are, to see what that kid needs, and to meet them there.
One thing I was thinking about, as a mom, I realized that when I leave my house, I still carry that mom energy. Like, I'm a mom in every aspect of my life. If I go, when I was teaching school, I was a mom to my students, and I mothered them. And I
Mm-hmm.
go to the store and somebody looks like they're having a hard time with something, I may go and like help them. And it's like the mom in me. Have you ever found yourself fathering people outside of the home?
Absolutely, without a doubt. So the the very nature of what I did in the Navy and my various, advancements through the ranks and having more sailors under my charge, that's the very foundation of where those traits were honed, is because that scenario, I know that, okay, none of these kid sailors are going to have the same parents and whatnot. So I have got to say, these self-starter sailors who can go and get stuff done, I need to put them on self-starter tasks that I just need to be able to check the results and say yay or nay. These middle of the road sailors who can get some things done, but the challenging things are a little bit, beyond their capability. That's fine. We're going to go give them tasks that they can do, help them with the stuff that's challenging, because you're still going to meet your responsibility, but I'm going to provide more supervision. And the ones who need full supervision, hey, I'm right here, because you're still going to meet your task, and I'm going to help you grow in that task, but I'm going to be right there to supervise every step. So that's in a workspace with, sailors from all different backgrounds. And so when I make that analogy in comparison to kids who are from the same parents but still have, differences, that it translates easy for me, right? So I felt that many sailors have been able to come and have conversations with me because they know I'm going to listen to them, right? As a parent, just because little Johnny and little Susie don't interact the same way, they both still need to be listened to. You still need to hear what it is that they're going through and what's going on with them, and parent them as appropriately based on what they need, and not what, well, this is what I had when I was a kid, so this is what you're going to get. Well, the times are different, right? The times have changed, the technology has changed, and so the information has changed, and how what we know about, parenting and kids. And when I look back at what the 40s, 50s, and 60s may be, where the ladies didn't work per se, and they stayed home and did all the parenting, as you've kind of alluded to, mothering everybody, their kids and the neighborhood kids, compared to the dads being the breadwinners, off working and coming home and, after work and talking with the men folk about men folk things. And then they were just present there. There may not have been as much interaction because there was not much of a connectivity to playing with the kids, right? So it didn't translate to doing that, right? Like, you can't do that because I need to make sure that they see me as a parent and I'm not being seen as one of their little friends. We've now realized, in my opinion, that, hey, I can reach you at your level and still maintain my parental position in our hierarchy, while at the same time being able to go sit down and play a video game with you, a board game with you, and just see how you're doing, right? To talk and interact. And I think that's important.
Well, so you mentioned that, and that took me in the Wayback Machine because when we met, I used to tell your daughter all the time, it's like, you don't know what you have, because I had never seen a child, let alone a daughter, like crawl all over her dad the way that your daughter, like when she would come to town and you're sitting down like watching TV or something, she would come, she'd sit on your lap, and the next thing you know, she's like on one side and she might be up on your neck, or she was just all over the place. And I'm just like, is that a thing? Like I can't even think of a time that I shared a chair with my dad. Like I'm like I don't have any memories of that. And I very well may have, but they were probably so few and far between that I just have no recollection of that. And so that was one of those things for me where I was like, oh, wow, you are so different. And you would be funny because you're like, well, I don't know what that means because I don't know what other people are like. And I'm like,
Yeah.
my word, you are a different kind of dad.
So that part, I think, when I look at, my Uncle Mark and just how he was, my late Uncle Mark, may he rest in peace, but just how fun he was. At no point that I ever construe, where he was as far as him being, my mom's middle brother, the three brothers that she had, compared to other people. I didn't in any way mistake him for being one of my little friends and on my level, but he was fun, right? And so for me, it's like, okay, hey, there's no problem in parenting and have limits as to what things will need to be done. But at the same time, okay, climbing all over somebody and climbing up on my shoulders or coming up and booping me on the nose, it's like, all right, whatever, because I'm gonna go boop you on the nose at some point, and you know, it's okay for them, in my opinion, to see that you are a person and that you have some personality and some fun side too. Sure, you may have to handle bills and work and all that stuff, but leaving that stuff at work and making home a safe, stable environment where you can laugh and joke and interact, I think it's healthy when it's healthy when it's done the appropriate way.
Mhm. Yeah. You mentioned booping on the nose, and then I tried to picture in my mind me booping my dad on the nose.
I think for even though it's the Father's Day special, I think you should be tasked to, and your tweet trans family wants to see you do it. I think you should boop your mom on the nose the next time to wear in her presence, and it'll be by proxy in retrospect to your dad. And let's just see how that goes. I think they would like to hear the results of that.
Oh my gosh. Well, so here's the plan. I'm gonna let you record it. I'll tell you when I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna boop my mom on the nose. And then we can just bring it back in an
Whew.
episode.
That's gonna be a two-part episode there because all the shenanigans that will ensue. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Let's let's do
oh,
that.
all right. I challenge accepted.
There
I'm
you go. So you can't even think about it without laughing because you know.
I can't. You're right, I
Fair
can't.
enough.
Okay, all right. I did want to touch on there's a class that you've been taking. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why?
Certainly, I've been taking a class. So, big picture wise, with my fraternity, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, they initially had a fatherhood initiative where they wanted us to be reaching out to young dads in the communities and to also mentor young kids. Well, that's now gone from an initiative to being a mandated program as agreed upon at our last conclave. So now that that's a mandated program, I enjoy that space. I enjoy, as we kind of talked about a few minutes ago, I enjoy being able to interact with young people and to provide mentorship and to learn and grow myself because that there may be things that they're doing that helps me evolve in this day and age to be a better dad. Based on that, one of the things I did in Hampton, Virginia, was to reach out to the city, and they have a 24/7 nurturing dads program. And I'm like, well, how better to be suited to help my chapter and fraternity than to go through the city's certification process, take their class, learn as much as I can, and then come back and then employ those tools with my chapter brothers as well as members in the community. So in that regard, that's where I signed up for the class, and two other members of our chapter signed up for the class as well, and there were two other people, two other men in that class. One has since not been engaged, but there's still one other guy there. So we're on these calls, these classes, shall I say, every Wednesday for 2.5 hours. And we go through a lesson plan. There's a curriculum. We ask each other questions. We go through scenarios, and we talk about some of the things that we've talked about on this interview here. And so it's awesome to kind of hear different perspectives. Is we've had some situations where people have just fundamentally disagreed with each other's position, so to speak, and not in a negative way, just sort of like how they saw being a father, what they remember from their upbringing, how their dads or father figures interacted with them, and we've had some healthy discussions about that. That being said, with our now fatherhood mentoring committee, that's a mandated program. I feel I feel like we're so much better suited to find those dads who are age 16 to 24 in society and to give them the tools that they need because that kid didn't ask to be here, right? And so now that that situation has manifested, to be able to get them into a program where they can see that, hey, we're interested in them, we're interested in them being suitable parents to their kids, and that ultimately helps the family unit. Whether the mom and dad are together in a relationship or they have some sort of co-parenting agreement, whatever it is, the kid needs both parents involved. And that's the key, is to find a way that if you're in a loving married relationship, great. You guys use your rapport to raise the kid properly. If that's not your scenario, okay, that's fine. Let's be adult about this and find the best way to co-parent and pour into the child so that they're a healthy, contributing member of society.
I like it. I like it. And you said that's for the program is for fathers as young as 16.
Yes. So the guidelines that our overall guidelines for the program is to try to find dads age 16 to 24. Um, it, the city, as best I understand, their program is suited for that. But when I think back to when I was 18, I didn't know to go reach out to the city of Mobile to say, hey, man, I got this kid on the way. Let me go see what kind of program they have, right? It's not something I thought about. And so, of course, technology has changed and whatnot. We didn't have cell phones back then, and all that sort of stuff. So now with the growth and where we are technology wise, excuse me, technology wise, the city is in a position where they have posters and flyers in churches and public buildings. But again, as I think back to a now uh, being in today's society, if I was 18, 16, 18 in this society, I still wouldn't know to go to those spaces to look for that information. So my intent for us in my chapter is we now have this training. We have been 16, 17, 18-year olds. Let us go and use the available resources to find where these dads are and to make them aware, right? So we can be that outreach program for the city. City still has those resources. We become that outreach piece. We're bridging the gap between the community and this program to say, hey, 16-year-old to 24-year-old, hey, come work with us, come talk with us. This doesn't mean that you have any obligation to become a member of the fraternity if that's not your thing. But we do want to see our communities better. We want to see our communities safer. We want to see people engaged in their family structure, however it may be set up, to care about each other and to not just continue down this path of just violence throughout the city because people don't have hope or don't have structure or guidance or not sure where to turn. So all of those things, and there's a bunch more that I don't want to go off babbling about, but those types of things to be able to say that, hey, as men of Omega, we want to see that, oh, here are some people that we found out of here. Hey, let me come talk to you. How are you parenting? How are you mentoring? How are you raising your kids? Okay, well let me give you some tools to help you out, right? And to get them engaged in a program that the city is already running.
So we're trying to build the village back up.
Building the village back up. That village helped me out so much in sort of conversations that you and I kind of talked about even this morning. I knew that when I was passing Miss Fanny's house or Miss Essie Lee's house or Miss Mabel's house, Miss Annie's house, when I had to I had to speak, right? You don't get to just pass by no adult and not speak, right? That was gonna get, and it's amazing how they didn't have cell phones and whatnot back then, but boy, you pass by somebody's house and not speak to them. You heard about it before you got back home. Like Miss such and such told me that she thought, oh, okay. So just being civil towards each other, right? And having that respect for our seniors and our elders and them respecting us that again, we just aren't miniature versions of themselves to go out and do the same things. That there is growth and there is change and we can utilize society and whatnot and it's okay to be different because you're still loved and welcomed and received.
Well, that's awesome. I know we're definitely going to have to come back to that at some later point in time because I am so sure that once you get all of these tools in your toolbox, that there may be some special program or nonprofit that you create to then partner also, because I know you're very passionate about fatherhood and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to some great things coming out of that.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
So, to wrap things up, do you have any closing thoughts or anything that maybe we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on?
Well, I think one, I want to thank you again for this opportunity to share, insights to my story and my past, and this definitely is one of my passions. And I think overall, it's just for people to really be true to themselves and where they are right now, and at the same time challenge themselves to be better versions of themselves. In doing that, to then, like I say, make sure that they have connectivity with their kids and not just letting quote unquote the streets raise them. Because kids are gonna learn from somewhere, right? And it's best that your kid, for example, with guidance and structure, is pouring into that kid who doesn't have guidance and structure, rather than that kid without guidance and structure is pouring into your kid, right?
Mm.
That's not really the situation we want. So we're not going to necessarily say that everybody is going to have whatever that 60s, 70s stereotypical scenario was of a house, a dog, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. It just may not materialize like that for everybody, and that's okay. However, whatever your situation is, whatever that looks like, whatever normal looks like for you, to be able to pour into kids with consistency, with a deliberate mindset of having a path to financial literacy, having a path to generational wealth building, having a path to being able to problem solve, having a path to be able to de-escalate situations, just all those things that help young people out, and things like that, in my opinion, can help minimize bullying. The physical bullying that we had back in the day is even worse now with the advent of the internet and the ability to cyberbully, right? Kids can go in to play a video game online, and some kid somewhere in the city, across the country, and in the state somewhere, they may just be physically, or not physically, but verbally assaulting your kid while they're just trying to play a game because of whatever trauma that they have in their life, right? And so now your kid is receiving this bullying. If you're not engaged with them to kind of let them know how to disconnect from that, how to manage that, how to bring that to the table to help them navigate that space, we don't know what all they may succumb to, right? Unfortunately, there are too many stories this day and age of kids who have succumbed to suicide and other forms of self injury because of somebody they don't even know saying something rude to them, right? And it, you don't want to do it when it's too late. So being able to have that skill set to say, hey, we're going to have a rapport and we're going to talk, and I'm going to know what you're doing and what you're engaged in on an age appropriate level until you can reasonably and responsibly handle yourself, I think is vital.
Okay. One last thing. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
All right.
Ready for this? What is your best dad joke?
Wow. You did put me on the spot. So one that I like, I just saw a couple days ago, and so I haven't had a chance to kind of process it on how it should go, but um, let's see. Did you hear about this new movie called Constipation?
No.
Yeah, it never came out. So now, as I share with with Tiffany, I'm not poop jokes aren't my favorite, but they are a solid number two.
Oh, oh, I didn't see that one coming.
So so anyway, um, yeah, yeah. We're sitting at a table. I have some food on my plate, and I go to take a spoonful, and some peas fall off my spoon and onto the table. and I look at you and I say, "Oops, I just peed on the table." No? Okay. All right. I'll I'll save your audience there. Uh,
Oh my
I'll
goodness.
leave it there and yeah, stop while I'm behind. I'll show myself out.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Thank you for all your fatherly wisdom and sharing the information about the program that you're participating in and the one that your organization is in the process of um, launching.
Running. Well, we've launched. It's just a matter of getting more tools in the toolbox and finding those young men. So the mentoring piece we're doing, we have a school that's our host, and we have some kids that we're mentoring. We're still trying to grow that more. So in a crawl, walk, run scenario, we're definitely in the crawl phase, but we're ready to get walking and running. And so now the fatherhood piece of identifying 16 to 24-year fathers, we're in that phase over the summer to be able to have a curriculum for them that's going to be in part supported by the city as well.
Okay. Well, good luck with that and keep us posted on how it's going. And like I said, we will be keeping an eye out for the great things that you're doing in the community as well. Thank you again, my love, for joining me for this Father's Day edition of Tweet Trends.
It's been my honor and my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the discussion, and just be involved.